Waterdeep and Womford Rats. After spending some time in Red Larch, thinking about your next move, you decide to travel to Waterdeep to cash in your 2,000 gold piece credit note. Also, further discussions with the dwarven archaeologists have revealed more information about the Sumber Hills and its haunted keeps that were built by a group called the Knights of the Silver Horn many years ago. You understand that Feathergale's Spire was one of these keeps, and you think you might learn even more in the City of Splendors. Even with your hippogriffs, the journey is expected to take 2 to 3 days, but first Muezza has a change of heart about his mount and elects to travel back to Feathergale to swap it for a giant vulture. He arrives back in Red Larch with his steed screeching disconcertingly from the sky and his giant crab hanging precariously from the harness made by Chancellor. You can't help but feel it ruins the image of serious adventurers like yourselves. The first day travelling to Waterdeep passes with little event, and by dusk you spot a ruined manor set back from the long road. You circle it to ascertain whether it is visited regularly, but what tracks there are seem sporadic and infrequent. You decide against making camp near the eerie place and strike out for Amphail despite the failing light. Amphail is just as you remember it from your first innocent journey into the Desrin Valley with the caravan you joined from Waterdeep just weeks earlier. You manage to obtain digs at the Staghorn Flagon, but do not trust the attached stables to house your flying steeds comfortably, so you decide to take shifts in the night to ensure they are safe and secure. Before setting off for bed, you try to discern any rumours surrounding the ruined manor that lies nearly 10 miles north of the village. You learn that it is called Rundreth Manor, and that it is haunted by a terrifying figure known to the locals as the Dark Lady, and that visitors have been known to go missing. You debate whether to visit the manor or press on to Waterdeep, and decide on the latter, promising yourselves to return one day. After a restful night, you head south in the morning sun, and the day is once again quiet and unremarkable. The atmosphere is cold due to it being winter, and you thank the gods for the special clothing you bought in Red Larch to cope with it. After many hours, you dive into a valley of the Sword Mountains, through which the long road pierces the range on its way to Waterdeep. You make camp in a forest so as not to attract too much attention. But the journey has taken a toll on your senses, and you fail to notice 2 owlbears stalking your camp before they pounce to attack. You are completely surprised, and Jodargo is floored immediately. Helfi attempts to summon her Pact weapon, but is incapacitated by a swift and vicious beak attack that all but rips out her throat. Suddenly, the future of the party looks very bleak. Respite comes from an unlikely source, as Edward the Crab, Muezza's faithful companion, attacks one of the owlbears and grapples it, preventing it from making its own attack and forcing it to break free, before landing a huge blow on the poor crustacean and killing it outright. Muezza is distraught, but Edward's sacrifice gives the party time they need to regroup and rally around the fallen Jodargo and Helfi, magically healing them so that they can lend aid and finally defeat the vicious owlbears. Muezza mourns Edward a little, but then he and Jodargo become particularly taken with the owlbear pelts and pledge to get cloaks made from them once they return to Red Larch. The morning burns bright, and the party feel better after a night's rest. What's also obvious is that Muezza has somehow obtained a new crab companion. Wondering aloud how another crab, let alone the first one, ended up so far inland, Muezza explains its presence by putting it down to a local crab nado that occurred in the area, which must mean there are more crabs walking the lands. You do not feel like disagreeing with him, he's a ranger after all, and sit down to enjoy your breakfast as he introduces you to Edward Scissorhands II. After a few hours on the wing, the Griffin Riders of Waterdeep are observable on the horizon, and not long after that, the city's walls come into view. Several Griffin Riders pull off from their sentry duties to identify whether you present a threat, and Helfi uses her noble standing to obtain an escort and safe passage to land. Your steeds are stabled in suitable accommodation, and you decide to go your separate ways, agreeing to meet at the Font of Knowledge Library, also known as the Temple of Ogma, the next day. Lady Helfi and Muezza head towards the North Ward to Helfi's family home. The Tabaxi is greeted suspiciously at first by the staff, but Helfi tells them not to worry. Helfi's parents are pleased to see she is well, and her mother is keen to get her to accept one of the many marriage proposals she is armed with. But Helfi wants nothing more than to reconnect with her family and tell them the news of Thurl's demise, something her father delights in, before they all retire for the night, with Muezza curling up in front of the great fireplace and sleeping on the floor, much to Helfi's father's amusement. Meanwhile, Leilune, Jadago and Quirky head to the dock ward to find an inn. During this time, Leilune obtains materials to examine the 2 scrolls recovered from Thurl's belongings. She discovers that both are arcane spells and that one is a ritual. She gambles on copying the ritual into her spellbook and goes outside to cast it. This results in her being able to write her name in the sky, as the spell is called Skywrite. She counts her blessings and decides to go to sleep. When you meet at the Font of Knowledge the next day, you decide to research both Rundreth Manor and the Knights of the Silver Horn. You learn that Rundreth Manor was once a rich estate, but that it fell into ruin 200 years ago. There have been several attempts to claim the site, but each has failed, with no discernible reason except for the rumour of the Dark Lady that resides there, that she is the doom of all visitors. However, one fact you do obtain is that the site is of interest to a faction known as the Harpers, and that they dissuade people from visiting. Research into the Knights of the Silver Horn reveals that they were an adventuring party that discovered the ruins of Tyre Bessel in 893 by Dale reckoning, 600 years earlier. They delved there many times to recover its treasures and built strongholds over its entrances. It was said that these adventurers feared something deep in the caves below the Sumber Hills, and their intention was to keep watch over the area. However, an orc horde swept through the north around that time, and the strongholds were overrun to become known as the Haunted Keeps. Nothing else is recorded about them at this library. You spend the rest of the day at the Temple of Saloon in order to cash in your 2,000 gold pieces credit note. The priests there swear to uphold your note and provide you with monies whenever you attempt to draw down on them. Satisfied that your 2,000 gold pieces investment is safe, you decide to spend one more night in the City of Splendours before leaving for Womford and investigating the river pirates there and their possible links to cultists. The 3-day flight is uneventful, and as you circle the ramshackle hamlet of Womford, you see that it lies on the opposite side of the Desrin River from the walled village of Bardray Inn. Landing and safely hobbling your steeds, you make your way into Womford and, through gently investigating the locals, locate one of the ne'er-do-wells that sold Endrith Valabo, Torhill's Flametongue's book on dwarven ancestry. He is very drunk and gleefully answers all your questions for coin, letting you know that he got the book from the Blue Man and his crew, and that you shouldn't mess with him, 'cause he's a hard man. You get directions to where this Blue Man might be and head to the quay. On your way there, you are intercepted by an unsavoury fellow wanting to know more about your business. He spots Muezza's crab and asks if you work for Jolly down at Riverguard Keep, but you don't give anything away. Unfortunately, the conversation deteriorates quickly, and the river pirate calls to someone called Sholly to help deal with you. Sholly appears from a nearby boat moored to the quay and is clearly the Blue Man and definitely not human, but he is just as clearly a despicable fellow. After a few barbed insults thrown in each direction, the conversation deteriorates into battle, with common riverfolk fleeing in all directions. The fight is over in a flash, with Sholly and the rest of the crew meeting a terrible, violent demise at your hands, whilst the folk of Womford look on, fearful for their lives. Thank you for listening to the progress of my Dungeons & Dragons group, as they make their way through the Princes of the Apocalypse campaign setting. Watch out for further episodes where we shall learn how the Womford Rats are tied into current events and what the party intend to do about it.